Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am thrilled. I'm thrilled because I have Keith Matejka here from Thunderworks Games. Say hello, Keith.
Hey guys.
And this is a new segment type I'm trying out. This sort of Q&A. Keith is in the middle of the role player Monsters and Minions expansion campaign that also includes a reprint of the original game, but he is a weathered Kickstarter guy and somebody who can. I want to talk a little bit about a campaign that's an expansion because a lot of people always ask questions about that and about reprinting. Like, that's a big moment. You have your first game, maybe you sold out, but you don't have enough money to do it on your own, and you want to have this opportunity to bring it back to life, right? So, Keith, why don't we get started? Just really quickly, why don't you give everyone just a background on what projects you've done in Kickstarter and sort of their size, and that just like a quick overview.
Sure, yeah. My first project was a small game called Bullfrogs. It was kind of a
Fun
card.
game.
What's that?
Fun game.
Well, thank you. Yeah, Bullfrogs is a small game, kind of cards and tokens kind of deal. I think I ended up. It was my first project. I think I raised like 26,000, and I printed about 2,500 units, and that was successful. And then after that, I did a game called.
But Bullfrogs sold out, and Renegade did a version, but you haven't done another campaign for that project yet, right?
That's correct. So when Bullfrogs was done, or was kind of getting towards the end, selling through most of its units, I was thinking like, well, what do I do next? Is the demand there? Do I reprint again? Do I move on? So I had the pleasure of meeting Scott over at Renegade, and they seemed interested in picking it up. So I passed the baton to those guys, and they reprinted it. It's still in print, so that's cool to see.
Cool. Okay, so project one next.
So then I did Role Player, which did fairly well. I launched it in, I want to say, November of 2015, and it raised 52,000, I think. And I did a print run of it, and as soon as it hit retail, the remainder that I had into retail, it was sold out. So then I was in the situation where I had to, Aldo at Impressions was saying, "Yo, I need more copies right now."
yo, I need more copies. Sold
and,
out.
And I had no cash. All the money was tied up in the printing, and there's always a delay of getting the money back through the retail chain. And even if I didn't have enough money to do a big print run. So I had a couple options. Do I run a reprint campaign? Do I get a kind of a personal loan, or do I just kind of wait for the money to come in and let it be out of print for a long time before I can get more copies on the
And let's talk about this moment for a quick second, because I don't think that a lot of people quite, you hit it and then you understand it. But basically,
Right.
once you do Kickstarter and you get enough money, and you get that money to do your campaign and fulfill the game, and usually somebody, because of the size of manufacturing runs, backers will get 700 and you'll print 1,500, so you have 800 left over, or 600 left over, or maybe 1,500, right, if you really go for it. But those go to stores. But when you give a game, whether through distributors or through impressions, the distributors don't pay on, they have net 30 or net 60, and then the money comes in as sales go by. It can take a really long time for that money to recoup. So the demand might be there, but you might not have that money on hand. And even if you've recouped, a lot of times that money was earmarked to pay for the product and the product development, right? So you're sitting on this hole. I know for me with Liftoff, I could have reprinted it at the time, but I didn't have the 10 or 12, and I didn't think the sale, unlike you, yours sold out like that, right? So it's like, I think it's going to sell more. But Liftoff didn't hit that hard. And so I actually had to say, I can't do it. But so you did. So what did what were you gave some options. Which did you take?
So I ended up getting a personal loan from a buddy. Those are good friends to have, right? And he gave me a sizable loan to get that second print run kicked off right away, and I also got in advance from Aldo, so I got some of that money that I knew was coming, but I got it a little earlier. So even with being able to say print now, the turnaround time on printing can take quite a long time, and
you're with Panda, right? So Panda has a long lead time. You can't just, and this is important. I don't think people realize this. You can't just go to your printer. Like, printers have lines, and the lines get filled with games, and there's there's a row of them, and they all are in order, and you can't just cut the line
Right.
when you want to. So you're like, oh my god, I sold out. Hey guys, reprint role player. They're like, okay, we can do that in 5 months or whatever they told you, right? But it can't just instantly happen, right?
Right. So, I mean, it took, I want to say it took like 4 months for the second printing to hit shelves again. And
sold out instantly.
yeah, as soon as they hit all those warehouse there, he had to, he couldn't fulfill all the orders. So he's saying print again. And I was like, okay, how do we make this work?
I want to emphasize to everyone as well, Role Player's a top flight game. I mean,
well,
it's selling out because it is stellar, and everyone's really enjoying it. So not everyone gets to be as fortunate as Keith here. But keep going. Okay, so then you've done a second run.
right.
And somewhere in that time, you do blend off, right? You do one more campaign.
Yeah, I did a small campaign from another designer, Scott Eaton, I want to say last spring. So, it was a smaller kind of speed dice game, and it struggled, man. So I put it out one Kickstarter, and I guess there's this assumption that I've got this following on Kickstarter, and I've done a couple games, so they're going to be there with me day one, and they weren't. It's a different type of game. Speed games aren't for everybody. It's kind of a more family-friendly game. And it struggled, and I ended up having to cancel it, and I relaunched it again, kind of trying to gussy up the offer and made the funding level lower. And it funded the second time around, and it came out, and I did a minimum print run, and it's doing okay, but it wasn't like the blown out of the water that Role Player's been. So
right, and that's part of, some games are going to work, some aren't, right? I mean, that's the challenge of any sort of hit-driven market. Okay, but
right.
Let's get to this sort of reprint expansion idea. So Role Player is just starting to, for lack of a better term, and I know it's not quite true, but print money. But you're shipping it and selling it, it's making money. But
Right.
you're also working on an expansion. Now, was that something you started at, before or during the original campaign? Was it after, you saw it was a hit? When did the sort of expansion thoughts come into your head? Because I know a lot of people struggle. Should expansion be in the first campaign? Should it be a stretch goal? How do you do it, right?
Right. So it's like once the base game was in a good spot, I was happy with it. It was kind of this contained thing. And there's all these kind of leftover ideas, things that I would like to explore and like to continue to add, but it's important to keep the scope of the project within reason, and especially as a small time kind of guy, I didn't feel like I could do these massive sprawling games. I mean, there's other folks like Isaac's Gloomhaven or whatever that feel differently.
24 pounds of awesome.
Maximum awesomeness. It is amazing, that game. But anyway, I had all these leftover ideas, and then as a result of running the Kickstarter, I had all these comments, and I had a bit of a pulse check on what people wanted out of the game. So I kind of used that as my guideline. So I started putting together the feature list. What's it going to be? People want more players. Great, 5th player. People want, let's hit all the features of the game and try to kind of do an upgrade on each level. And I wanted to build something that wasn't like slap it onto the back of the game kind of thing. I wanted something that was kind of integrated from the beginning, and there was whatever part of Role Player you like, I'm upgrading it somehow along the way. And I started playtesting it even during the original Kickstarter campaign, because in my mind, the Role Player was done. Right. I went to Kickstarter with a finished product because that's the way I like to do it, and I don't want to be changing stuff, because that is risky, and the schedules can get off real fast when you start doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
Kind of the exception to that was during the Kickstarter campaign for the first game, is that I decided to, after much kind of pressure from the community, I ended up adding the single player version of Role Player, which is done.
You're a good single player designer. So for the record, Keith has
Right.
done multiple, one published and one coming single player versions of Pencil First games, but it's definitely something you're good at. Sir.
I've been growing that skill, and there was a lot of calling for it during the original Kickstarter for Role Player, so I ended up adding it, and players seem to really like it. So
and it's
I'm
really
glad
integrated into monsters and minions, right? Like you have the single player monsters versus the multiplayer monsters, and it's all baked in from the get go.
Yeah, mainly because for the expansion, I did a lot of cold playtesting with single player gamers, and they had specific things they wanted to do, and it was in the scope of the project. So let's do it.
And I have to give you credit, right? So I mean, for those who haven't seen, Monsters and Minions is live on Kickstarter now. I mean, I'll link it and all that, but it's doing quite well. I mean, you broke $200,000. Very, very, my compliments. But I have to say, I'm watching the campaign, and you really do that thing where you're asking for feedback from the backers, and like you're doing surveys, and you're like, which should be the character, I'm really impressed with how engaged you are, but how you're integrating their feedback into what the features you're going to put in. I mean, you must have sort of quarantined that stuff off, so you knew
right.
it was
Things that aren't going to affect gameplay. I'm happy to get feedback from backers. It's like, and I've done that on the last couple of campaigns. I think on Blendoff, I allow people to name some of the recipes, give suggestions and name
for the
stuff.
fruit drinks in that game, right?
Yeah, and then and roleplayer people wrote some of the best backstory cards. So I was like, I mean, I'm not. These guys are living and breathing D&D. They should be the ones writing the backstories, and it gives people an opportunity to get kind of get some of themselves in the game. So that's people really enjoy it. And honestly, the number of suggestions I've gotten for backstory cards for the expansion, like it's probably close to 200. It's crazy. So
Google Docs.
Just tracking all the suggestions is a work list. And as a result, I'm like, let's put more of these in the game. There's so many good suggestions. So, it's cool.
Well, so we caught up. We talked about Blend Off. We've talked about the campaign. So, but you've done the second print run, and now your expansion's ready. So you've got the expansion ready, and so there's a couple interesting things going on here. So one is you have another print run on the way. So on your campaign for the Monsters and Minion campaign, so let's just, again, from the example, this is going to be a Kickstarter advanced type video. Somebody's like, I've already done one, I'm ready to do this. You had to do two things. One, you had your expansion and your expansion dates and the time to fund it and get it manufactured. And then you sort of had this sort of two-tier thing you did where you had ship all together for one price. I don't know if it's February or whatever the month is, but sometime next year, early next year, you're going to get the expansion and the base game. But then you had this other tier underneath it, which was a little bit more expensive. I don't think terribly more expensive, but a little more, where you say, you know what I'll do is I will ship you the base game role player first now, and then the expansion will come in a second shipment, so you don't have to wait to play role player, right?
Right.
Can you walk us through that?
Yeah. So I mean, it started to get complicated as I've got these printings of role player coming in, and then I really want to do this expansion. And people really want it, and I don't want to. I'm basically kind of sick of waiting for it. So I want to get it to the market. So the base game is currently out of print. It's going to be in print in the next month or so. But there's a lot of players that I think aren't going to want to wait for the expansion to come out to get both. So it kind of gave me an opportunity to capture buyers of both the base game and the expansion in the same campaign. I mean, it definitely is a more complicated message to communicate to backers, that like, hey, you can pledge to the base game and the expansion, but if you could just get the base game in a couple months at your local game store. So that's a little bit more of a complex message, but because
you had the tier for just the expansion alone as well. I forgot that one.
That's correct, yeah. And then, but the thing is, because the second, the first and the second print runs were so small and distribution was limited because just the copies didn't exist, there's a lot of people that are kind of pledging to that to get the base game because they want to make sure they can lock it in, because they've had such a hard time.
Right, and that tier, that double ship tier, has a fixed number of backers, right? It's effectively whatever the number is, a limited amount that can have it locked in, right?
Yeah, the ones that can get it early and then get the base game right away and then the expansion later, that's limited mainly because I'm going to pull those copies from distribution and pick and pack them myself. And while Right. I mean, you know a thing or two about doing
Yeah,
that.
man, I know, man. Well, I've never had a sold out project that I'm picking. I mean, but I know what it's like to ship from home. That I know.
Right, right. But um, it can kind of take over your house for a couple days, and but
A
anyway,
couple weeks, months, man. Not a couple days.
well,
Um,
you need a bigger army, is what I'm hearing.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
and
go
it gives
ahead.
me an opportunity. I can since it's at my house, I can sign copies for people, and
Oh,
some
that's
people like
nice.
that. So
And
yeah,
so, okay, so you had that, but then another thing. Again, I'm just trying to pick out little points here. Again, the both games are awesome, and I've happened to reviewed and played both of them, so I'm excited about it. But separate from that, you also then added this retailer tier, right? And that was this a couple of different campaigns have done it, and it's this
yeah.
$5. It's not the retailer buy six bottom tier. It's a different one. You did it at $5. Can you talk a little bit about how that worked and what your thoughts were there?
Yeah, so the kind of how Kickstarter projects for retailers have been changing, and I wanted to accommodate the retailers a little bit. So retailers, the idea of locking up that much liquid cash as a retailer until 6 9 months until you get the product, is killer for a retailer. But they want access to the product, especially if there's anything exclusive to it.
Right, because this isn't a new product per se. This is sort of a known commodity that retailers have seen and are expecting, right? So it's at a sort of a different stage.
Yeah. So the idea is that they can pledge a $5, and then we can kind of work on the back end of how many copies they want, and they can order the base game or the expansion in whatever quantities they want, and they get them at their what the price point that they're used to getting things at their kind of 50% off MSRP pricing.
Right, and that's only possible in volume. I mean, they're not getting a better deal than other people. They're doing a big volume of whatever you're
Right.
working at.
And they don't have to pay until right before it ships to them, which lets them kind of keep their cash liquid, which is critical for the success of a lot of brick and mortar stores.
It's huge. It's huge. Cool.
So that's what I'm doing. I've had I think last time I checked, I had about 10 retailers doing that. But since my product goes into retail anyway. Most retailers will buy it through a standard retail chain. But
Right.
it's there if retailers want to take advantage of it. I mean, it kind of locks in quantities for them. Whereas if they on previous print runs, they may have gotten shorted or their distributor didn't have enough copies for them. So
Yeah, and Aldo's pretty. From my experience, he's very all the orders will come in, and then he'll just sort of say, "I'm going to divide what you asked for by the amount we have." Like he tends to be sort of level or balanced about how he does it. I don't know if that's always the case, but that's been my impression. So
yeah, that's been my experience as well. Is that he just gives the same percentage. Like he shorts everybody the same percentage.
Right, he shorts everyone the same.
He doesn't play favorites with different distributors. So
I mean, as is probably appropriate. So okay. So you have one thing that's come up, right? And I just did a video in reaction to this top 10 things designers
Right.
to stop doing video from the Dice Tower, and
Yeah.
part of that I had a little rant about something Tom said having to do with designers and publishers, and I sort of was like, well, that's sort of me. So one question I have for you, and it's a really important topic, but one question I have for you, right? You fit in that category. You're a fantastic
Right.
designer, and you're probably a good publisher. You're not maybe top of the line. I don't know. You're probably. I sort of feel you're probably better on the design and the pub. I don't know, but you're doing both, right? You have your own company. You're doing both, and you're making your own games with your name on it, front and center. And then you're doing these other sort of publishing deals with other designers. Scott Eden, as you mentioned, with Blend Off, and I don't know if you have another one next year or whatever. But you're doing. That's basically what a publisher does. You're going to get the designer. You're going to develop it, and so. Can you just talk a little bit about that balance for you and why you're doing it, and if it's working or if it's just a slow death and you're going to walk away from it? I mean, what?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of my opinion of it is evolving. I'm a designer publisher, and Tom basically said like, "Yo, be a designer or be a publisher. You can't do them both well. Pick one and do that one well, basically." And I mean, I think for a lot of people, that's probably appropriate advice. but I guess I don't care. I'm gonna kind of do my own thing. You know? I mean, obviously, I know a thing or two about design. You know, people tend to like my games, and I feel like you know, my reach isn't huge like the Asmodees or even the bigger guys, but I think that I'm able to get my product in people's hands, and I think people like me as a publisher. So at this point I want to keep I want to keep doing what I'm doing. At some point, maybe the tides will change, and I'll kind of end up siding with one or the other. But I kind of like publishing, and obviously, I know a thing or two about design. So why would I tell myself I can't do something I love? That doesn't compute for me so much. So I have to stop loving one of those two things, and then I'll have chosen one, I guess. The thing that I wanted to comment about Tom's video that it maybe started me thinking, it's like there's a lot of things that I could do better as a publisher if I wasn't focused as much on design. It's like I would probably be doing a better job at marketing my games. I'd probably be I would be more into the numbers and making sure that everything's up and snuff and maximizing return and all that stuff. But I don't excel at that stuff. I think I do a serviceable job, and maybe that's because I'm spending a lot of my cycles thinking about design and making the best game I can. So I don't know. It's something to think about, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure every year you get to reevaluate your life and decide whether it works tonight. Well, so look, I think we've had a good call here. Again, I can't recommend Role Player and the expansion enough. I think they're fantastic, and you've done a great job both as the designer and as the publisher.
Awesome.
And the Kickstarter guy. But is there any, just for the general advice for somebody who maybe hasn't, if there's like entry level and maybe you're clicking into success a little bit and rolling into it, is there any advice you give to the guy that is, or gal that isn't quite, is on their first or second project and isn't right where you are yet?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my biggest project is don't jump unless you have clear indicators for demand in the industry, in the market, and you have a pretty good inkling that it's going to be there. I would be real conservative on doing reprints. I get nervous when smaller guys do, they do an okay game and it does okay, and they get excited about doing a reprint and trying to find money to make it happen, and like that could be a death note for a small guy.
No quicker way to go out of business than spend all your money and not get it back.
Yeah, you don't want a warehouse full of cardboard that you're paying a monthly fee to store.
Yeah,
for sure.
All right, cool. Well, so but at the same time, there's a great opportunity if you go. Some people do win and from humble beginnings. But so thanks for being on. I haven't done a Q&A quite like this before, so hopefully people appreciate it and it goes over well. But thanks for all the insight along the way, and certainly good luck. I don't know, breaking 300. I mean, like, does anything matter? Like, good luck doing even better.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't be happier. So everything's kind of gravy on the top at this point. So,
all right.
Well, and thanks for having me. I had fun.
Anytime.